People pleasing is a very commonly used phrase to describe how we are basically oriented towards pleasing other people, often at the expense of ourselves. And by now, you probably also know that people pleasing is a trauma response and not a personality trait. Although many of us, as we are discovering what people pleasing is, we will identify with it so much. We will say, oh, I'm such a people pleaser. I'm doing this, I'm doing the other. And unknowingly, we continue to define ourselves through the responses that we created in order to survive. And the interesting thing about people pleasing, even though it sounds like a nice self-abandoning, prioritizing others, martyrdom kind of thing, in reality, it's not even about being kind, but it's about avoiding rejection, punishment, or disconnection. Basically, people pleasing is us manipulating our external environment and how others perceive us so that they will like us, not abandon us, and accept us. Out of the desperation then to be accepted, to be included, and to belong, we become someone who tries to anticipate what their environment needs of them so that they can do it and constantly keep everybody happy so that they can feel like they are safe enough to be in those spaces, which is quite dreadful space to be in, right? People pleasing is basically the hyperfixation in making other people happy at the expense of our own happiness. And we learn how to people please, first and foremost, through our childhood, and specifically the ones that teach us that we're supposed to people please them are our parents, who constantly want us to manage their moods, especially if they're emotionally immature and toxic parents, and teach us that if we want to be safe, it is our job to navigate the emotional experiences of others so that those others are feeling good. And that means that when they're feeling good, we are safe around them. People pleasing is the place where we resort to, the adaptation we resort to, when the people around us are not responsible for themselves. Those who raise us do not become responsible of their own emotional reactions and emotional world. And that teaches us that we have to do it for them because ultimately we just want to be safe. So at its core, people-pleasing is self-abandonment in exchange for safety, hyper-attunement to others, and disconnection from ourselves. It's performing goodness in order to avoid conflict or criticism. Is being really obsessed with our image towards others, not out of grandiosity, but because we just feel very unsafe to think that someone thinks badly of us or has seen us do something they consider bad. It's just a horrible sensation. People pleasing at its core is basically saying yes when you want to say no, when you apologize essentially for existing, and when you become responsible for the emotions of others. And deep down of all of this, people pleasing, the core of people pleasing, is our fear to also experience the fact that we are a different being from others. So underneath all of it all is a fear to set boundaries. And I could also say that if you're raised by narcissistic and emotionally mature parents, you probably don't even have the experience of having set boundaries. So there's no boundaries between you and other people. You don't comprehend yourself outside of how other people see you and perceive you. And you can't find safety around other people because you don't have these emotional or even energetic boundaries, because you were never allowed to have them. Because all your life, all you're looking at is how others are feeling, to establish a safety, to be yourself. Well, to be the adaptive self, the full self, the people-pleasing self. The mask of people-pleasing is one of the most common ones that we hear about. And it is especially prevalent in women because it really fits the women that are bred through the households that are using emotional and mental oppression to raise us, right? We learn how to people please because that's the way we are going to stay safe. So how do narcissistic parents create people pleasers? First of all, they teach you that love is conditional, which means that what you do has an effect on how other people feel about you. If you're a good student, if you're helpful, if you're attractive, if you're agreeable, something that you're doing, your behavior, can modify how others feel about you. And I can say that that also creates an illusion when we grow up. When we meet people that maybe don't like us or whatever, they're indifferent, and we're like, oh, let me try and do more things and be more of this, more of the other, and they'll change their mind. That's why we do it. Narcissistic parents create people pleasers when they make you responsible for your emotions, because whenever they're in bad mood, it becomes your fault, which means, again, they give you that illusion that you have control over how they're feeling. And you are essentially responsible for your emotional safety by making those around you become safe, right? The tragedy of all of this is that we are being raised by people who are emotionally unsafe. And then we take it upon ourselves to make them safe people by tiptoeing around their mood so that they stay safe with us. So we're earning our right to protection. The other thing that narcissistic parents do to create people pleasers is punish you for your autonomy, right? Whenever they see that you have your own opinions, or you say you set boundaries, you're selfish, you're disrespectful, they shame you. So again, you're seeing that, oh, all of a sudden, this parent is now being very mean to me and they're shaming me, and it's because I shared my opinion. That slowly conditions us to be like, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. You know what? I'm just going to smile. And again, this is very fitting to how we end up becoming like women. We do that in our workplace. We do it in our relationship. We do that when people treat us in all sorts of ways that we resort to just smiling, nodding it off, pretending we didn't hear it, just because we were intensively trained that if we respond to people's abuse and bad manners or something that we don't like, then somehow we find ourselves to be the ones to blame. So narcissistic parents also create people pleasers when they praise you, and possibly the only time that they praise you, for self-sacrifice, right? For putting others first, and make it seem like this noble thing. I'm probably going to have to repeat the thing I say very often, that if self-sacrifice was actually noble and self-abandoning, and this devotion to others, this selfless devotion to others was a virtue, men would have claimed it as their natural thing, but they didn't. So that tells me, like that we are being praised for things that only benefit others. Really, in childhoods like that, with narcissistic parents, alongside with societies and patriarchy, right? Women are praised for things that are actually not good for them, but are just benefiting others. Oh, you're such a good girl. You're so quiet. You're so helpful. You're always thinking about others. All these things we're being praised for because they're benefiting the others that are using us for these things. So at the same time, narcissistic parents will also shame you for expressing needs, which means that it makes you double check with yourself. Before you express a need, you're like, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't express my need. I shouldn't say what I need. And deep down, what this comes down to is like, am I really allowed to have needs? Am I supposed to have needs? Because if every time that we express needs, we're being shamed and criticized, we begin to suppress it and we feel ashamed already. So when we have a need, we feel shame. And eventually we just feel ashamed for having needs. Narcissistic parents turn you into a parentified child, which means that you learn how to please and people please them and manage their emotions, be their emotional regulator, be there to support them, right? That's people pleasing 101. And as usual, the culprit of a lot of what narcissistic parents do, and the root and the core sort of wound that they inflict on us, that of course results to us than thinking about how to please others in order to find safety and belonging is that they make our worth tied to performance and how others perceive us and what others think of us. So, of course, we are always out in the world looking outside what the world wants, what the world needs from us, what do they praise, what do they don't praise. And so we live based on that. So we have these childhoods with these people that essentially teach us that our focus should be what other people think and feel and experience so that we can feel good and safe in ourselves. And we end up just walking around life. We say yes when we want to say no. We apologize and take the blame for things that are in our fault. We over-explain ourselves. We shrink to keep the peace. We keep quiet to keep the peace. We feel guilty when we decide that we need to prioritize ourselves or we want to say no. We keep attracting one-sided relationships, people who only take, and we just understand, we accommodate, we are tolerating, all these things, and they're just like barest of the minimum, if so. We end up becoming women who constantly feel responsible for how others feel. If somebody's upset or moody, we're like, what did I do? What did I do? And then on top of thinking, what did I do? If we're asking them, what did we do? And then we keep trying to be super nice to make them change their mood, right? Because that's what we did at home. We were trying to make her moody, volatile, inconsistent, narcissistic parent to be nice to us. So we became a little clown, really. A little performer, dancing around all sorts of dances, all sorts of things, to get them to just be nice to us so that we can feel safe. And we do that too now here, right? And then we also grow into women who chase approval all the time. We just want to be approved. That's the drug of our choice. That's what really makes us feel safe in this world. The more approval we get, the sensation is safety for us. It's not even a grandiose thing. It's more like, I'm safe. I'm approved. They like me. They want me. They're nice to me. They're going to be nice to me. I belong here. I matter. I must have some worth in this world, right? That's the sequence there. But what is really happening here is that the more we pursue that validation, the more we have to do. The more we have to do. It's not a thing that we can hold on to, because then we have to do a different thing, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And of course, if we are a people pleaser, we're going to lose ourselves in our relationships, right? We just become what the other person is. We just don't want to be an inconvenience to anyone in any sort of way. We don't want to be too much. We don't want to be seen as too much. Am I too much? What does that even mean? You're too much. Too much of what? Too much of awesome. Too much, right? So if you think about it, what does it mean you're too much? What are you? And you're too much of what? But anyway, how to heal from being a people pleaser. How to heal from being a people pleaser. There's obviously the practical things, right? We have to, first of all, understand our conditioning. How did we become a people pleaser? And create spaces for inner transformation to happen through inner child work. When we're reminded of the past decisions that we made. And so we find ourselves in the making of people pleasing, and we learn and we teach ourselves something different in the moment of that memory, right? So we go back into our histories. We find our younger self. We find out through our history, when did we start shifting for people pleasing? And we release a lot of those memories and a lot of that fear that comes with that decision. Because in order to become a people pleaser, meaning to just focus on others and make your entire life a performance, and you put on that mask day in, day out, and you put it on for so long, you don't even know who you are underneath that mask. I have a session on Heal called The Masks You're Wearing. And I see this reflection often. And it's so interesting that we're so different in so many ways, but the way we adapt is so similar. And women write to me and say that, I've worn this mask for so long, I didn't even know who I was. This feels like my face, right? And people pleasing is one of those masks that are harder to release because of how much unsafety there is underneath that unconscious decision to become a people pleaser, which is why we do inner child work to mobilize all of that energy, that fearful energy, and release it so that when we don't people please, we don't feel so unsafe, right? So we have to feel all that fear underneath. And then it will be natural to start setting the boundaries, meaning it will be an easier decision, but it won't be very easy at first. We need to learn how to sit with guilt, right? We have to learn how to let people be disappointed in us. We have to essentially, which is why it's really great to go back in the past, to reverse engineer the training of our people pleasing. So whatever we feared or avoided or silenced in our childhood, that's exactly where we will find our healing, right? We find that, oh, if I do this, I'm going to lose the approval of my mother, for example, right? Or if I say this, I'm going to lose the approval of my father. And you do it, kind of thing, right? You become you say no, you don't over-explain, you become an inconvenience, you find safety in your body rather than the approval of others, and you just focus on yourself. You become the one thing that you were never able to become, focused on yourself, on your wants, on your needs. But being okay with being disliked is not easy, and there's no people-pleasing way to go about healing out of people-pleasing, meaning you can't avoid disappointing and displeasing people when you stop doing it, right? That's why a lot of people-pleasers struggle, because they're like, how can I learn how to say no and set boundaries, but without them being upset? You're still people-pleasing, but now you're just trying to find a way where you're trying to strike another balance, but there's none, because you're still thinking about them and what they feel, how they will respond to your boundaries, which is not your responsibility. Yes, communicating boundaries in a kind and efficient way, sure, but also you're not responsible for how people take your boundaries and receive them, because people will take your boundary and say all sorts of things about it. They will say you're defensive. They will say you're triggered. They will say, that wasn't so nice for you to do that. Why did you do that? You're so mean lately. What happened? You've changed, all of that. You'll see in their face sort of disapproval. And that's like, oh, be okay with it. That's the key. Become okay with being disapproved and disliked, which is very, very difficult. And your focus with that will have to stop being what other people feel and think, but what you feel and think, what your inner child feels and thinks. If you were with your inner child and people were treating her this way, what would you do? Would you try to please the people who tortured her, or would you set boundaries with them? Would you care how those who abuse you and disrespect you see you more than you care about how you see yourself? Eventually, what happens as we grow out of people-pleasing is we hold ourselves to higher regard, right? We value ourselves more because we didn't see that in the past. And so now protecting ourselves and supporting ourselves and being on our own side feels more important. So the approval, let's say, of our own selves, meaning feeling good about the things that we do for ourselves, becomes more important than the approval of others. And the pride that we feel in ourselves for standing up for ourselves, for doing the uncomfortable thing, for setting the boundary, then that sort of generates a feeling of only wanting to get this feeling from within and not from others. Because the inner child and the woman that you are and the energy that you hold within will feel proud when you take care of yourself, when you prioritize yourself, when you're doing well in life, right? That's when she will be like, great. That's when it feels good inside. Others will approve of you when you're self-abandoning, when you're prioritizing them, when you're forgiving them, when you're tolerating them. So until your approval for your own self and for the things that you do becomes more important than the approval of others, it's going to be hard to stop people pleasing. And the outcome for others is not going to be a good one. But for you, it's going to be more than pleasing. Dropping the mask of people pleasing is like really telling yourself that you deserve to exist here without performing 24/7 so that other people feel good about themselves. It's really you telling yourself that you are no longer going to be abandoning yourself for the sake of the approval of others, and that others' opinions of you are not defining who you are. Because as you do the healing work and you learn who you are and you discover the self that you have within, you understand that the approval of yourself is what will help you continue to navigate this world with a sense of pride in who you are, and not what you do for others or how others perceive you, but really in who you are, in your own little ways, for doing everything that you do in the way that you do. It's like having a parent who is constantly proud of you for the effort of showing up. And when you worry too much about what that parent feels, that parent is saying, honey, don't worry about me. What do you want to do? How do you feel? What do you prefer? Instead of dragging you, they're placing you back where you should be centered in yourself. I'll see you soon.